Okay, part 2 of the courts. Sorry for the outside noise. There's Our Lady of Perpetual Lawn Care over there, and cars coming. Everyone's coming home at this hour. But this is part 2. Again, potential for trigger warnings and stuff like that in the subject box, yada yada. So when it came down to the third court appearance, and there's been so many lies, which I've pointed out to the courts. I don't know if anything that I've written and submitted to the lawyers have been presented to the courts. I have no idea. There's very little communication. But almost slightly less than a week before we were supposed to have the most recent court appearance, I sent, about a week early, I sent an email both to my son's lawyer and my lawyer stating, okay, this is what we're going to need. These are the requirements that we're going to need for us to be, able to be there at the court and stuff like that. And that I would, be presenting something that I wanted submitted to the judges ahead of time. A couple days before the court appearance, I get an email from my lawyer saying, oh, you have court that day? Didn't know. No one told me. I think I got that the Friday before court. Or maybe the Thursday. Yeah, it was the Thursday. And the court was on Monday. So that sent me into a panic attack. Not a deep one, just oh crap. This is going to be bad. This is going to be real bad. Thankfully, she was able to make it, but no one told her. And there's a specific woman in control of my life who is also in control of a lot of the paperwork, including paying for the lawyers and stuff like that as necessary, or presenting any paperwork that needs to be done so that I don't have to pay. Whatever. Yeah. I don't like that woman. I don't think she likes me either. And that's the anti-happy lady. We got issues, me and her. She is not professional. Literally, I don't know how she has her job. I don't know how she keeps her job. Because in the States, she'd have been fired long ago. The level of, I've been a manager. I know what's professional. Even if I don't necessarily lick ass to do it, I know what is. And she lacks it. Showing up to appointments an hour early without any kind of notification. The most recent time, I was already in the shower when it happened, and she's waiting outside my door, and I'm like, I had a feeling. Trusted that feeling. Didn't wash my hair. Just took a shower. Quick duck bath. But yeah. So my lawyer hadn't been notified, but she was able to still be there. But I'm like, oh, that ain't good. And when I told my son this, he started freaking out, realizing the potential of how bad that would have been. Because if we'd have shown up, and these are his words, paraphrasing, but if we'd have shown up, and my lawyer had not been there when I had been under the assumption that she would be there, I would be under the assumption, that everyone involved would have notified her and blah, 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 which is why I don't like assumptions, which is why I make sure I try and clarify as much as possible, because of assumptions, I went 85 days without electricity, which means no hot water either. And that was not pleasant, especially at the beginning of the pandemic. So I don't like assumptions. But my son was freaking out because he realized that we'd have already been in a panic because we'd have had to gotten up around 5, 6 a.m. to be able to be there by 8:30 so that we have a window of time to talk to the lawyers before court starts at 9. So he'd already been in a panic attack from that, all the stress, from trying to get up early, not getting enough sleep, getting there, traffic, things like that. So he would have already been like that. And then having to realize that I didn't have a lawyer, he realized that would have sent me into a panic attack, which I would have had to have been controlling. Even if I control it on the outside, it still vibrates outward, and he's highly sensitive to that. He knows me well enough. You don't have to be a psychic. You don't have to be, an energy reader to be able to know that something's wrong. And how deeply wrong it is. So that would have skipped several levels of his natural panic stages. And that would have pushed him way closer to being in a blind panic. And he realized that how the past 2 court appearances had gone, how each one escalated his panic attacks and how dangerous each one became. And how much he really really wants to get rid of his father. Plus, that week, I think like 2 weeks prior, we had an appointment with the educator, and that had left him on edge. And getting the notification that the court would be much earlier than we thought it would be. We thought it would be at the end of June instead of the beginning, or beginning of middle. So that kept him in a state of high anxiety for a longer period of time. The weather was really hot. There were a lot of flies because nothing we did would get rid of them, because there's no bug screens, and it's just like one thing after another. And he came close to attacking me the one time. Told me that he was in the stages of potentially attacking me a second time, which I'm very proud of him for being able to detach from it and say, okay, look, this is where I'm at. There's a chance I'm gonna, hurt you. I'm gonna go over here and calm down, which is great. I'm glad that he has that level of safety and communication to be able to speak that with me. Still creeps me out. Yeah. And then there was a third incident as well. So those 2 weeks prior to the court were getting more and more intense as well. And he was losing more and more control because he's at the end of his limit. He's running on fumes, as he says. And he's losing his hope. He's losing his faith in humanity, or specifically the French, but in humanity in general, because he's constantly complaining about what's happening in the news. And his go-to movie for feeling hope, for feeling safe, for believing in people, in the goodness of people, is Hidden Figures. He loves that movie. It touches him real deeply. And he identifies with those strong women. And he identifies with the struggles that they're going through, because even though we're white, we're not French. Technically he is by blood and marriage, but he still doesn't identify as French, and so he gets treated as something different. So he identifies with the movie a lot. And it helps him. So to the ladies of Hidden Figures, thank you. Yeah, it makes a big difference in his world. So, but a lot of his coping mechanisms weren't working, and when he found out about the fact that I wouldn't have my lawyer, he recognized that there was not only the potential of him going into a severe panic attack and just outright just attacking his father, but how quickly he would go into a blind panic attack and not care. Just not care and just start attacking anyone and everyone, including potentially me. And he's really good at what he does. He was really proud when he showed me his scores for laser tag. He had the highest rank for his team and often the highest rank for either team. And he's real good at getting the target, running around, dodging, hiding, things like that. So he knows. Plus, he has some training in martial arts, not much, but he, with the LARPing and stuff like that. So he has some fighting awareness. And his go-to mechanism for calming down is usually going into the forest, especially with the scouts, pushing his body as hard as possible, carrying heavy logs and using them for exercise. So he's a lot stronger. He knows what he's capable of doing. And so he was recognizing that there was a real potential that he could easily hurt or kill nearly everyone in the room or anyone else who came in afterwards. Especially if anyone, like a security guard, came in with a weapon. He also understands that anything can be used as a weapon. So the metal chairs, desks, things like that, and it freaked him out, realizing how close that we came to disaster. So it's real terrifying for me to watch as every court appearance keeps getting worse. That the people in positions of power aren't doing their job at a base minimum, which is to keep a neutral standpoint, to keep all of the education that they've had at the ready so that they can use it accordingly. They bring too much of their personal issues, their own bias into it. And he's repeatedly called them, as having like a god complex. They behave like gods. And it's painful. So the court appearance, he went in. He's already in a panic, but he's calmer because of the fact that he knows that I have my lawyer there. But instead of just the one family judge, we had all three of the family judges there. And from my understanding, they're being very abusive with him. He does not want to speak French. They're forcing him to do it. He's not comfortable at all with them. They're just constantly attacking him, making him feel less secure, less safe. And he decided, he didn't want to be a part of the middle proceedings. He just didn't want to deal with it. So he waited in the hallway. Middle proceedings went along. They started attacking me, which I'm glad he wasn't in there to see, because that would have just triggered him even more. And the problem with me is that I have a compulsion to do my best, to speak my truth, and to do whatever's necessary to just get through the appointment, to keep going, to try and speak my truth. But the more I fall into that, the less I'm coherent. And they kept me on the defensive at such an intense level that I couldn't say the proper words. I couldn't speak my truth. I could barely speak. It was hot. My brain was on fire. I almost passed out twice in the hallway as we took breaks, because even though it was early enough in the morning, the building is hotter anyway, and I can't regulate my body temperature. I mean, there's actual articles that say just how detrimental it is for the handicapped with higher extreme heats. But because I don't look particularly handicapped, and I don't have a handicap status because of more assumptions and more messed up, lack of paperwork and help, they don't take me seriously. And so they're trying to accuse me of being the danger because of the fact that he's not in school. Now that he's 16, he has that right to choose not to be. And he needed at least a year to recover himself, to stabilize. They're upset with me because he's not socializing, but at the same time, he can't be in social environments if he's going to potentially jump off a cliff. And again, the scouts never notified them. He can't be in a school situation, because it's just too overstimulating. He's lost contact with pretty much all of his friends because he had to switch phones, and all the information got lost. I've tried reaching out to people, getting numbers and stuff like that, and no one's contacted me back. No one's made an effort to contact him. So he's been very, very isolated, and it's not healthy. But we've been working with it, and we've been, spending the time as wisely as we can, trying to develop new coping mechanisms, trying to talk things out as he starts to remember things. It's not perfect, but it's been safe. And my situation is highly toxic, so it's not like we can easily go out and do anything. And he's very much in hide mode, in not exactly hikikomori, but close. So they're upset at the fact that he's not, being followed by a therapist, but how can I when everything has been very much delayed? We didn't get access to the educator until 5 months in, and no one kept us aware of what was happening. They sent us paperwork that didn't mean anything. No one translated it. No one explained anything. No one set out a timeline of, okay, you're going to have an educator. And my son basically thinks that, it was basically nothing more than a spy, which I can relate. He is relaying back information to the judge. I get that. But the thing is that we didn't get information saying, yes, you're going to have this person involved in your life. Unfortunately, the system is backed up. You'll have to wait 5 months. Had they just said that level of professionalism would have made a difference. But no one said anything. And we're kept ignorant, and we're kept in the dark, and the more we don't know, the more the anxiety ramps up. And there's lots of assumptions along those lines as well. And people keep assuming that, I can read the paperwork, and it's difficult enough to read anything in French. It's even more complicated when it's French jargon of the legal sort, which doesn't say anything, and not all of it can be, looked up online and say, oh, that's what that means. So it's been difficult, and it took almost 8 months maybe 10 months before we got access to the medical card, so that he was on my medical card, so that we could go and take him somewhere to the doctors. Because the woman in charge of my case is lacking, seriously lacking. And to this point, I swear she's sabotaging on purpose. Which doesn't make me happy. And because I don't know how the system works, I don't know how to get rid of her. I don't know how to switch. I don't know how to write a complaint. There's no information. And any information they do give me doesn't make any sense. And it doesn't have all the details. So again, it keeps me ignorant. It keeps me stuck in a toxic situation, toxic circle. And hello, plane. Making a repeat performance. So that made it difficult. And, the courts were saying, well, your ex, he said he's willing to pay for it. Yeah, that's great. Except for the fact that anytime we tried going to the doctors, he automatically gets notified of what's going on. And my son does not want him involved in any way, shape, or form. In fact, at one point he sent a letter saying, no contact. And it was a very in-your-face letter, which my ex broke, but still told the courts that he was respecting. Lies. Lies, manipulation, and slander. So that didn't go well. We didn't get a notification. Like, no one made an effort to help us get access to a therapist until about September. And all this started in June. We didn't hear back from anyone until just before the court appearance. And at that point, I didn't know that the court appearance was going to happen in, early June. I thought it would be at the end of the month. They wanted to put the appointment at the end of the month. The only availability that they had is way far away down in the south of France, which my son's car, I don't trust it to make those kind of long trips. Plus the heat, plus the anxiety, it's too much. And it's difficult for my middle to drive for very long because he had the accident, and so he's got back damage. So long distances are very hard for him, and I can't drive. I don't have my license, and because of the stroke damage, I can't drive a stick. So all kinds of complications. Technically, we could get an application for getting a medical taxi down there. The problem is that would only cover him. He's not going alone. He refuses. Again, it has to be someone who's an English speaker, and he doesn't feel comfortable with any of the people that he's been involved with the therapy or any of the hospitals. So even if we want to, we haven't had access to. But all of it gets placed on my shoulders as if I'm the bad person. And no one wants to hear about my situation, how I literally had a stroke. I was suffering from abuse. I was divorced less than a year after my stroke, not allowed to heal, not allowed to, I don't even know what kind of stroke I had, put on medication that damaged me, that had nothing to do with my stroke, was most likely an antipsychotic. And I was just literally abandoned. I was forced to sign the divorce papers under duress with a lawyer who was horribly toxic that my ex picked out for me. I had to restart my life, not knowing anything about the culture, dealing with my oldest, who was the most traumatized out of all of them and the most aggressive out of all of them. I had to stop each of my boys from either suicidal ideation or homicidal ideation. And he was the most likely to do something, which I understand. I don't agree with, but I understand. And so I had to start over from nothing in a country I can't function in, having to relearn the language, and any of the help that I got made my situation worse. So I've had to file for bankruptcy. I haven't been able to work. I don't get all of the benefits that I'm qualified for. I don't even have all the qualifications I need, like handicap status, because no one will help me figure out how to do the paperwork or get me to the doctors or get me someone who can go with me to the doctors. everything is placed on my shoulders, and I'm expected to do more and more with less and less. And the longer this goes on, the more trauma gets added onto it. Right now, I'm lucid. I can speak coherently. Shoot, this is already 20 minutes. The more the trauma intensifies, the more deeper I go into a panic attack, I lose my English. Let alone I lose my French, but I lose my English. So that's complicated. But basically, everyone's putting everything on my shoulders, making me the responsible one when they don't want to take accountability for the situation that they've put me into. I have no problem taking accountability for my actions, inactions, and reactions. I refuse to do that for the behavior of others. So that's kind of where we're at with the courts.